Welcome to Unleashed, the podcast where we redefine leadership by focusing on what truly matters, the people driving change. Change leadership is about guiding people through transformation in a way that inspires them to embrace change because they believe in it. Whether you're a leader looking to foster a culture of growth or someone eager to break through barriers in life and business, this podcast is for you. Now our host, Wendi.
Welcome to the Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Wendi. On today's episode, we're joined by Jeffrey McNulty, a top retail expert for 2025 as awarded by RETHINK Retail, and a top 100 global thought leader in the industry. With 30 years of frontline leadership experience at major retailers like Home Depot, Lowe's, and PetSmart, plus 2 decades as a retail market research analyst, Jeffrey brings a rare hybrid perspective to retail strategy and leadership. He's the best-selling author of The Ultimate Retail Manual, now in 28 countries, and the creator of the Ultimate Retail Courses, helping leaders and businesses thrive in a retail space that is evolving. Today, we're diving headfirst into the retail apocalypse. Who's dead? Who's barely surviving? And who's actually surviving and thriving in the chaos? And we may or may not talk about wine and eating watermelons. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Wendi. That's a fantastic introduction, by the way. So, hey, much kudos to you.
Well, I like to keep it real because, you do these posts on LinkedIn that, I'm like, wait, watermelon? Wait, wine? You're a red wine drinker? So we may or may not dig into that. I just think it's absolutely fascinating.
And I got red hair, so it all ties in, right? Watermelon, red wine, red hair, all of it. God loves the gingers is what I hear.
Oh, that's right. Well, Jeffrey, when I look at your bio and I look at your social media, you are a retail guru through and through. Easy for me to say. And, I had the thought before we pressed record that there's just not a lot of people that, they're growing up and they're, little kids and they're 8 or 9 years old and their parents say, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And they go, I want to be in retail. Like, I don't know if those people exist. Was that you?
No. How long's the show again? Yeah, I started in retail in 1982 down in Sunrise, Florida. It's a suburb of Fort Lauderdale. And my grandmother actually got me the job. I was still in high school. I was in 10th grade. And my grandmother went into the local Publix, and I don't know how she got me the job. I don't know if she threatened the store manager because she was pretty hardcore, which I loved. And she just came home and said, Jeffrey, you have a job as a part-time bag boy. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot. So I go there, and it was just a part-time job in high school to get some money for I just bought a car, I needed gas money, all that. So as I was working at Publix for about 5 or 6 years, I started really enjoying the experience. I started thinking, you know what, maybe I can do this. I really like doing this. I liked helping people. I liked the structure of it. And I liked how people really cared about other people. And the turning point came for me in 1991. I worked out of the gym called Gold's Gym, and all my powerlifting buddies were lieutenants and captains at the police force all throughout Fort Lauderdale. And they wanted me to join the force. So I put in the application, passed the oral boards, passed the physical, all that stuff. And then the Gulf War hit, and they put a freeze on all the hiring. So I'm like, well, you know what? I had some buddies at Home Depot, and they're like, why don't you come on over here? It's a great, newer company, great leadership. And I thought, okay, I'll come over there for 6 months or a year until they lift the hiring. And about 6 months later, I get a call, and they wanted to bring me on as a police officer. But at this point, I've already met Bernie Marcus, and he was probably the most influential leader in my life. He was one of the founders and CEO of Home Depot. And the store I started at was the Deerfield Beach Home Depot store. And he lived in Boca Raton, which is about 5 miles north on I-95. So he was on our store probably about 4 or 5 times a month. And I was enamored with his transformational leadership style. He was on the floor. He was engaging. He was outgoing. You would never think he was a CEO. And I was like, wow, I really like this guy. I like he had really good energy too. I get a vibe off of people when I meet them, and he had a very, very pleasant, engaging vibration. And I thought, he's really passionate about this company. And I also met all the other co-founders, Arthur Blank, Pat Farrow, Ron Brill. I also had a chance to work with Marvin Ellison, the CEO of Lowe's. So I was blessed to work with a lot of really high level retail icons that really understood the industry very well. So getting back to the police story, they offered me the job, and I thought, you know what? I really like this retail thing. I was only associate at the time, and I was only making like $8 an hour. It wasn't a lot of money. And they were offering me double my salary, full benefits. And I thought, you know what? I really like this Home Depot thing. I think I'm going to go ahead and stay with this. So I turned them down. And every paycheck, every week we got a paycheck. And I thought, man, should I have taken that job as a police officer? Because it's hard to turn down double your salary. And the retail bug bit me, and I said, you know what? I really want to be the best servant leader that I can be. Now the problem was I was rough around the edges. I'm an Irish Gemini, so I had a lot of hot blood running through me. Had a mild temper, cared about people, but didn't know how to channel that energy. So I said, Jeff, you got a ways to go. You got a long ways to go to become a servant leader. So I started shadowing the leaders in the store that were really good with conflict resolution, people skills, and I had a good vibration from them that they cared about people. And it wasn't an easy start. My first review as a department head in 1993, I had about 12 different things I had to work on. I thought I was going to get fired in the, in the review. And I'm like, I got to get better at this. So I went home that night, thought about shedding a tear, and I thought, you know what, just get out my little Post-it notes. And I wrote down each bullet point, and it filled up my whole mirror, my bathroom mirror. And I said, you know what, the next review comes around a year later, I'm going to have every single one of these deficiencies turned into strengths. And the only way I'm going to take each Post-it note off the mirror down is when my peers and my bosses all agree that I've actually changed those habits or behaviors. Now, to be realistic, no one's ever going to give you 100%, but I would take 80% of the people and do that. So the next review came around. They were like, wow, what the heck did you do? And I'm like, I read a lot of books. I started going and taking seminars, shadowing. And every time I made a mistake, I tried to figure out what I could do to make it better. And that was the moment, 1993 was the moment that I realized that, you know what, I really am meant to do this, but I have to make sure I continue to get better at the most important part of being a leader is conflict resolution. Because a lot of stores I worked in, Wendi, there was the sugar mamas and the sugar daddies, and they had their cliques, and they didn't follow the procedures and the SOPs, and they were always their favorites. And I thought, you know what, my management style is going to be fair and firm. Fair means I'm going to bend over backwards to help you, do whatever I can to help you get wherever you got to go, but you got to pull your own weight and meet me halfway and work on what you need to work on to get better. And that was a struggle in those days in the mid 90s with Home Depot because it was still pretty hardcore. And it was, a lot of construction people coming off the sites, a lot of profanities flying around. It was old school. It was like the Wild West. I enjoyed it for the energy, but it didn't resonate with the fact of how some managers were treating employees and using demeaning names. So I was already ahead of the curve on the conflict resolution part, but that's the most important thing that I really focused on, and it served me well throughout my career.
Mm-hmm. Well, and before we pressed record, one of the things that you said is your greatest passion is employee engagement. So as I'm listening to your story, and as you're unpacking that and your opportunity to get to work with some of these great CEOs and great leaders in retail, how did that influence your passion, number one, to get better and to engage as an employee, and number two, now become a leader of leaders?
Yeah, it was an adjustment for me, Wendi. I'm not going to lie. I grew up in a very, very rough, I had a very rough, tumultuous childhood. From 5 to 12, we moved 17 times in 7 years. I was
Wow.
in a juvenile home. Wasn't a bad kid, but I got in some trouble, hung out with the wrong people. That's where my vibe system came from. I learned how to read people very, very quickly, and I could sense their energy. And I started thinking, you know what, Jeff, you got to focus on self-awareness and discernment. You got to be brutally honest with yourself. So I was very into handwriting. I know you saw one of my posts about long handwriting. And I wrote down every strength that I had, that I realistically thought I had, and every weakness realistically that I had. And my weakness was people skills. Because the way I grew up, you didn't say, oh, thanks for coming in today, and hey, you did a great job. It's, hey, you get this effing stuff done or we're going to, fire you. And
Yeah.
that was old school. And I didn't resonate with that, but that's what all I knew. It was almost like I was in war and I came home and I didn't know how to adjust to a different environment. So it took me a couple years voraciously reading books. In fact, I still have some of those books from the late 80s and early 90s when I was reading. But I focused on myself and said, Jeff, why are you doing this? I never did it for the money. I never did it for the power, the ego, the titles. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all want to make a better life for ourselves. And and move up the ladder. But I said to myself, Jeff, you got to do this because you really want to help others. And the good news about my childhood, and this could tie into spirituality, but I know we're not on this subject on this podcast. But everything that happened to me in my childhood was a blessing. Once I forgave the situation, understood that I wasn't in control at that very young age of my life, I started realizing that God has prepared me to help others because I know what true suffering and pain really is. I mean, if it was bad, I pretty much went through it. And so I said, you can really relate to a lot of people by focusing on them. And other than like, I didn't do drugs and stuff like that, but other than that, I mean, I could relate to most people. So I focused on trying to help others. And I learned a little secret along the way. I didn't know I was actually doing it until years later when I understood what I was doing. But I was tapping into each person's intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is what people do naturally, that innately do, that brings them passion and joy. So every employee that I worked with, I wanted to get to know them. Not on a superficial level, like a lot of managers would go around, just try to get to know a few things about you, but they didn't really care. And I said, I want to get to know about each person, what they love to do that they would do for free. And for example, at Home Depot, if I'm talking to a paint department manager one time, and I ask her, what do you love to do? What did you do before this? And she goes, oh, I love to garden. I used to own my own gardening business. And I'm like, well, why do we have you in paint? Why can't we put you in garden? She goes, oh my God, I would love that. And I still remember her name. Her name was Amber Maiman. I still remember her name. And this was 25 years ago. And I thought, that's really the haiku right there. If you can put people in positions where their innate gifts and creativity and passion can come out. Now, you can't do it with everybody in a store because most of the guys love hardware and lumber, the hardcore areas, and you can't have everybody in all those departments, right? But sometimes they're like, I love to teach and train. I'm like, okay, well, why don't we put you into a training program that you can be maybe one of the trainers in the store for some of the clinics that we have and some of the department meetings and stuff like that. So that was one of the biggest things I learned, and I teach this with all my clients, is just to tap into each person's intrinsic motivation. But here's the key. You actually have to do it genuinely. And I created an acronym called SAGE that keeps me focused. It stands for sincere, authentic, genuine, and engaged. And that's always at the forefront of my mind when I'm working with clients, when I'm engaging with employees throughout my entire career. And so that was the turning point when I realized that I got to focus on my conflict resolution. I got to focus on my people skills. And it wasn't easy. And if I can do it, then anybody can, because I was on the farthest side of that pendulum as you could almost be. But I generally cared about people. I just didn't know how to show it. I didn't know how to be more professional and more polished. So I was like a rough diamond. And it took me probably 3 or 4 years to the point where I thought I was pretty decent. And I still had another 5 years to go before I felt really ultimately confident. And at that point, you go through imposter syndrome. Am I really this good? Am I really not that good? And my gauge was always how the employees, my peers, and my bosses responded to me. What was the feedback they were giving me? And I'd walk up to some of my peers and say, hey, what do you think are some of my greatest strengths? And they would tell me, what are some of my greatest weaknesses that you see? What can I improve upon? And they were shocked because, we're all in competition to get promoted. That's like Michael Jordan going over to Kobe Bryant and saying, hey, what can I do to get better? You don't want to give away your secrets to your peers because they're on the same playing field as you and they want to get promoted. But I wanted to know the information that I could work on to get better. And that's what propelled me forward.
Well, and now your company name is New Retail Ethos, and that seems very intentional. So tell us more, unpack this. Why did you name the company what you did?
Yeah, I focused on the ethos part because it's a new energy that we're shifting into in retail. And I see that, and we've spoken about this before, but I see this with a lot of retailers that they're transitioning to AI at a voracious pace. And it's not healthy. It's not healthy because what's happening is 70% of the business that I work with, the clients that I deal with, and they're global clients, they have 3 things that they're focused on right now that they're not getting the results on. It's talent acquisition, talent retention, and employee engagement. And I asked them, why do you think that is? And some of the C-suite, they have the answer. They know it's the AI, the technology, and the trepidation that employees have. And some of them don't really understand because it's hitting us so fast right now. It's not like it's a gradual thing. I'm probably the only retail person that's on socials right now that's not mentioning AI in every other sentence. Now, I have a whole chapter dedicated to technology and innovation in the Ultimate Retail Manual. There's 25 chapters. I have a whole chapter dedicated. I speak about AI in there. I really do think AI is transforming our society and our world. However, I focus on people. Everything comes back to people. And the analogy I use, since I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, is Vince Lombardi had what's called the power sweep. It's a football play where you hand the ball off and they go to the left and there's the guards that pull. And everybody knew it was coming. All the defenses and the teams knew it was coming, but they couldn't stop it because he was so perfect at it. And what I focus on is the employees, the engagement piece. That's where it all comes from. And the stores that I shop right now and the stores that I consult with, the retailers and the businesses, everything is going to digital, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But so I said, Jeff, I need to create an axiom. I create a lot of axioms and a lot of acronyms to keep me focused, and I help my clients with them. And I put this on the back of my book. And the axiom is: the future of retail is a healthy balance between innovation, technology, and in gigantic letters, human engagement. Because we're human beings, we're not robots. And I see a lot of people that are transitioning into AI so fast. And the analogy I use with them is: imagine you're in a NASCAR and you're driving around the track, you're going 200 miles an hour. That's AI. And the employees and the downfalls and the SWAT and all that is the brakes. And you look down and there's no brakes. That's what's happening. There's ethical AI governance that is not happening right now. Everybody's just going full bore with AI and how it can help them, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. But they're forgetting the core basics of retail, which is the employees and the customers. So at Home Depot, when I was there, Bernie Marcus, he made a statement that at first I thought he was kind of off his rocker, but then I think he's spot on. He said 50% of your people are going to want to know where the product is and how much it is. And he said the other 50% are going to want help. They're going to want human engagement. Now, I know this was before a lot of the technology came around, but the principles are still applicable today, because when I walk into a store, name a retailer that gives you excellent customer service consistently. That's not on commission, that does it consistently. And there's very few that are out there right now. And in speaking to some of the leaders in these companies, Wendy, they're in denial a lot of times with what's really going on in the stores. See, to me, I listen to the employees, the leaders, the customers, and the vendors. I don't listen to the C-suite people, because sometimes, and not their fault, they have a lot going on. They have to maintain the vision of the company. Don't get me wrong, but I want to go on the ground engaged level and see what they're really experiencing. And, personal experience is the best teacher in the world. And so what I do with my clients is I explain to them that there needs to be a transition to this. And that's what's happening right now. It's going so fast. The AI is going so fast that the employees don't know where they fit. They're telling me, Jeff, I don't know if I have a job in the next 6 months. Should I start getting my resume going? Should I get on LinkedIn? Should I start looking for other jobs? Because they don't know how they fit in with the new technology that's coming along. Right. And again, I'm all for the technology, but I just don't think it's being rolled out properly to alleviate some of that trepidation with the employees and the leaders. The leaders are saying this too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. What you're saying is resonating with me big time. I just had several conversations in the last couple of weeks with mentors and friends and lots of people in the industry who went to the National Retail Federation show in New York, went to CES in Vegas, will be going to the JCK, the jewelry, the big show for jewelry in Vegas. And, every single person is saying exactly what you're saying. And that is, everybody's talking about AI. You cannot go to a keynote. You can't go to a breakout session with people who are not talking about AI, and also people who are not using the word omnichannel. Right. And, in and of itself, none of those things are bad. It's the reality in our world. The next step, though, is what's concerning to me. And that is, we're talking about all of these efficiencies that AI gives. And Jeffrey, I don't know about you, in the last few weeks, there have been so many times that I have been online arguing with a chat bot because I can't get to a person. Like if I have to ask one more time, representative, yes. It is this constant spiral, I think. And, you think about exactly what you said, these C-suite that are all thinking, oh, look at the efficiencies that we're getting. And they're looking at the data and they're asking the wrong question. And that is, are my employees engaged? Because what we know to be true, you got me on my soapbox. What we know to be
Hey,
true
get on there. Get up higher. Welcome to the room.
is, 33% of the workforce did not come back after COVID. I
Correct.
mean, it's always been hard to hire and retain in retail. It is harder than it has ever been. And so, what I see is C suites who are making decisions how to be more efficient with less people instead of getting down to the root cause, which is I don't have the right people. I am not paying money to train them, to make sure that they're engaged, to pay them. So, Jeffrey, what are you seeing in all of that, just in terms of the decisions that are being made for efficiency over effectiveness and customer experience?
Well, first I'll go with the 5-point plan that I share with a lot of my clients. This is a high level view. It's not the deep dive that we really do, but the first one is vision. Do you define the division, the scope, the objectives, and the deliverables on how AI is going to enhance innovation and creativity? Because it will. Number two, plan. Is it a detailed project plan? Is this communicated in a detailed project plan way? Or how create investments, timelines, brainstorm the SWOT analysis we talked about, and create 1, 3, and 5-year projections. Next is communicate. Explain to the employees in real jargon how AI is going to impact their careers. Be honest with them. Be upfront with them. Okay? Provide tangible avenues for career tenure and advancement. And here's the key. Here's the big one of all of them. It's upskill. Provide a clear path for employees to learn, grow, and acclimate to the new technology. Transparency is paramount. That's what's missing right now, Wendi, is the transparency. Now, here's the thing. People see everything. They know more than you think they do. Okay? In some of the companies I work for, the employees were called peons. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
They're the most important people in the store.
That's right. They're your brand.
They're more important than me. I'm the store manager. I'm going around. They're more important than I am because they're in the trenches, hands-on with each customer. So, and the last point, and then I'll tie into the upskill piece, is execute. Transition with employee and leader feedback and create a feedback loop of honest communication. That's not happening. So I was so passionate that I would stand outside of a Home Depot on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday during the busy times, and I would grab $10 gift cards, and I'd probably have 5 or 10 of them, and I would ask different demographics of people coming out, how was their experience today in the store? Okay? And sometimes they would say, well, everything was perfect. I'm like, absolutely not. You want this gift card? Give me something I can do to get better. It was, of course, it was joking. It wasn't serious. I'm like, you want the gift card? You want the gift card? You better tell me something. And they're like, oh my God. Customers like, you're demanding that I tell you something you did wrong? I'm like, yes. And they're like, why would you do that? I'm like, because I can get better. Now, sometimes there were people that had a perfect experience, but that's a one-off. And then they would say, you know what, Jeff? I was at the paint counter and I had to wait 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, what time were you there? Look at the receipt. What time were you there? Go back, check the schedules, check the graphs, find out what the lunches and the breaks. And pretty soon, next thing you know, I'm down to like 1 or 2 small issues in an entire store because I kept doing this. I would do this probably 2 or 3 weekends out of a month. I couldn't do it 4, but because you have your profitability and your markdowns that you have to look for. But I would do that, and customers would come back and say, Jeff, you're the only person that's ever asked me what you could do to get better. And customer complaints went down, our customer surveys went up, employees were happier. Employees would come up to you at a meeting and they say, Jeff, what did you do? Because in the last couple months, the employee complaints dropped like a rock and customers are happy and they're joyful and they're like, it's a pleasure coming to work. And it's one of those, I call it an actuator. It was an actuator to get to the core issues, what was going on in the store to get better. But most people only want to hear the good news. What did I do well? Don't get me wrong. We all love to hear what we're doing well, myself included. But I want to learn where I can get better. And this came back from my childhood and from my early days starting at Publix and then Home Depot. And tying into your question, employees are the most important, not customers. It's not customers, it's employees.
That's right.
Okay. So I look at all 4 segments. Okay. Most people look at only 2. They look at employees and customers. That's it. I look at the leaders. Who's running the show? If the leader's not happy, it's an umbrella. It's a pyramid effect. Okay. So Bernie Marcus said to one time, we were on a walk, and this was, I think it was 1993 or 94. We were in the Boca Raton store where he lived. And he said, I can walk into any store in the company. Now, meanwhile, at this point, there's probably over 1,000 stores. And he said, I can walk into any store and tell you the exact personality of the store manager within 30 seconds. And I'm like, holy smokes. And I share this long story in the book, by the way. And I'm thinking, how that's a superpower. How can he do that? There's no way. And what I found out was he was right. You walk in, the first thing you look at is the parking lot. When you walk in, how's the parking lot? Are the cart corrals overflowing? Are the trash bins overflowing? Okay. Walk in the store. Can you get into the store? Is there merchandise blocking the entrance? In feng shui, I talk about feng shui in the book. It's the mouth of the mouth of the store. Okay. How's the returns? You look in, how's the return desk? Are there people frustrated because there's nobody helping them? Then he looks down both sides of the main aisle. The aisle's blocked with the big ladders. How's the lines at the registers? Are the employees helping and walking? I mean, I started going through like a 30-point checklist in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is possible. But the employees are the most important aspects of your company. It's not customers. Customers are very important, but they're not the most important. Because I know a lot of companies that have customers, they don't have good employees, and next thing you know, guess what they don't have anymore? They don't have customers anymore. And then the leaders get overlooked because we give you, I remember asking one of my managers one time when I became salary, I'm like, so, okay, I get a $10,000 increase, possibility of bonuses, stock options that may or may not be worth something. I work 25 to 30 hours more per week. And that's supposed to, I'm good now. That's it. You don't care how I feel and what I think. And I want to go to the soccer game and want to take a day off to do this. And I'm thinking the leaders are some of the most underappreciated people in a company. And they're the ones leading the charge.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And then the last one that gets left out consistently is the vendors.
Yeah.
I never understood this. And so I would invite vendors to our powwows and our cookouts and stuff like that. And they're like, Jeff, you're one of the only managers that ever invites us. And you don't want anything. Like some people would invite them there because they're trying to, butter them up and get some kind of different, advantages or stuff like that. I'm like, no, you're part of our team. It's one big circle with all four segments intertwined together. And the pyramid it's employees at the top, not customers.
That's right.
And I would tell employees that you're very valuable to our company. And I would get really upset when customers were ripping one of the employees. I'm like, no, I'm the store manager. You come rip me, not them. They have nothing to do with this. And once I stood up for the employees and they saw that, the respect skyrocketed. And it just permeated throughout the entire store. Now, I can't talk about feng shui in this because it would take too long, but every store has an energy. Okay. Every store has an energy. Every place has an energy. And the key is, have you ever walked into a home or a business or a place and it felt, wow, this place feels awesome. I feel relaxed. I feel confident. I feel good. And then you walk into some places and you can't get out of there quick enough.
Yeah.
It's because the energy is not circulating right.
100%.
So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but the employees are so valuable. And during COVID, I was so happy to see them finally, the frontline employees, finally get recognized for how important they are to each business.
Yeah. So I do the same thing, Jeffrey, when I work in-house with my retailers. One of the first things that I do is I have them draw out their org chart, and everybody always starts with the C-suite. And I go, this is completely wrong. It's got to be flipped, because where do we start? We start with the customers, and then the next person on the org chart is in fact the front line. And you think of, and I ask the question, have you ever had a bad experience in a retail store? Everybody goes, yeah, and everybody wants to share it. Everybody gets all excited about their bad experience. And I say, so how did you then describe that experience, that one day, that one moment with that one person? How now would you describe that store by looking at the name on the outside of the store? And how many of you would go as far as to say, I will never go back into that store because of that one experience I had that one day? That person is the representation of the brand. And so, I read all these articles, and I know you're passionate about this as well. And I do a speech called The Evolution of Retail. And I literally talk about what you talk about, which is the apocalypse of retail. And everybody wants to say brick and mortar is dead and, stores are closing. And I read this article the other day that was so interesting. It was, the stores that are opening new stores or the companies that are opening new stores this year. And, Tecovas is opening 10 stores. Spanx, we don't even know how many they're opening in airports, and Viore and Academy Sports and Barnes and Noble, Jeffrey, I don't know if you saw this, is opening. I want to get it right here. 60 new stores. Barnes and Noble. When we can get books on Amazon, like that was mind-blowing to me.
Correct.
And so this whole brick and mortar is dead and the apocalypse of retail. And, have we seen some of the gigantic, Toys R Us, which is now rebranding, but went out, the Sears of the world. When we look at that and we look at what you're talking about, which is really this inverted pyramid, it seems so obvious to me. So, Jeffrey, why aren't the C-suites getting the importance of their people? Because you know as well as I do, you look at the marketing budget and you compare that to the training budget. And to me, that says everything.
I think I should have had you help me write my book, because everything you say, I talk about in the book extensively. And
Oh,
I call them gatekeepers. The employees, I call them the gatekeepers of your brand. And you're so spot on with what you said. The return process is the most broken piece of most stores. It's getting better now, but it was
well,
broken for a very
and
long.
remember, Jeffrey, Nordstrom back in the day, they made their name by
Correct.
saying you can return anything because
Right.
retailers suck when it comes to return. And that's your
Who
biggest
has that?
opportunity to be the
Name one
hero.
retailer that has that right now. There's only one retailer that has that. Which is it?
I don't
Starts
know of any.
starts with a C.
Who is
Costco.
it?
Costco. Costco's the
Oh, I never
only.
thought of that. And it's true. I just brought something back.
Now, there's people that really take advantage. I was reading a story, I think it was a few months ago, where a lady returned a toilet. It was like 3 years old. Used toilet, by the way, used toilet. And I'm thinking, okay, that's pushing a little bit. But yeah, they're called gatekeepers. And I think what's happening is, and again, there's a lot of C-suite that I speak to that are phenomenal. They're dialed in. They really get it. They're engaged, and they tie into what I call the five. I call them the 5 E's of experiential retail. And number one is experience. Number two is entertainment. Number three is engagement. Number four is execution. And number five, and probably the most important of all of them, is ethics. That's what I see happening, is the ethical piece is slipping, because employees and sometimes leaders in these organizations, they'll do sometimes whatever it takes to get a certain result because of the fear of the Monday morning call when you didn't make your sales plan, or you're over in your markdowns, or you missed this or missed that. And so to me, I talk about having non-negotiables, okay, in the book. I talk about that, and I talk about it with my clients as well. And these are values and convictions that never waver, regardless, I'll say it again, regardless of external circumstances. They're anchored into these values and convictions, and I was one of them. I probably could have went up the chain a lot quicker if I just would have kowtowed and did some of the things they asked me to do, but I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to do it. And if I don't get promoted, I don't get promoted. But I sleep good at night. I look at myself in the mirror and I know that I'm doing the right thing. But what's happening is the engagement piece. See, there's a law called the law of contiguity. Okay. And it's basically a law that happens in our minds where we connect two separate things to one experience. So the bad return experience at XYZ retailer is now in my mind as a bad experience. It might only happen one time,
Mhm.
but it's so egregious that it turns the person off. So I made sure that every customer that had a bad experience, but especially a bad return experience, I said, you send them to me. I want to call them personally. They're like, Jeff, you're the store manager. I'm like, exactly. I want to call each one of them personally and apologize for the experience. Now, if you think I was intense, Bernie Marcus, there was a walk one time, and I think it was that same walk in 1993, 94 in the Boca Raton store. There was an older man, he's probably in his 80s, and he was arguing with the return desk associate. And he was trying to return tires for a car. Now, no, Home Depot's never sold tires, even to this day. And the old man was adamant. So Bernie walked up there and brought the whole group up there. And he said to the gentleman, how you doing? I'm Bernie. He didn't say he was the CEO. And he said, what can we do for you? I bought these tires here, the customer said. He's like, how much did you pay for them? He says, I think it was like $300. He pulled $300 out of his pocket, handed it to the customer, and said, thank you for shopping at the Home Depot. Now, you couldn't do that today, but that was the example he was leading. And he said, it's my money, take care of the customer. Then what he did is he asked the store manager to drill those tires onto the wall above the return desk. So it was a beacon of take care of the customer. Now, times have changed. Okay, we've evolved where I remember there were people coming in with a stick on the ground and they were saying it was a $100 tree. So it was getting to the point where, and you're held accountable for markdowns. So the returns experience is paramount. And I call there's a lot of right fighters that are in some of these retailers. And what happens is a customer will come in, they might not have a receipt, or the receipt might be slightly over the return period time. And the associate will say, well, we can't return that, sorry. And the customer will say, can I speak to a manager? Manager comes up and just regurgitates the exact
That's right.
same verbiage.
Yep.
And the customer's like, well, why did you even come up then? What's the purpose? And now there's so many options, like you said, with Barnes and Noble in stores, and there's all this. Amazon's been around in the omni channel and online, and it's because people are craving those 5 E's.
That's right.
They really are. They're craving the 5 E's, and it's everything in life is cyclical. That's what I believe. Everything comes back around. It's a circle, right? And it's experience, entertainment, engagement, execution, and ethics. That's what customers are looking for. And
Mhm.
how do you do that? How do you tie into that? It's really simple. Place employees in the store, train them on the products. Okay. Product knowledge gives you an opportunity to help customers in a personal, engaging way. I walk into a lot of stores now, Wendy, and everything is QR codes. It's YouTube videos. They want you. There's no more POP. There's no more pamphlets. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I understand it's digital now. You can't stay old school with everything. I get it. But there's nothing. There's no employees telling you how to do stuff. They said, well, just go to this website and watch this YouTube video. Well, you're forcing them out of your store because
Mhm.
when I'm explaining to you how to do something, what's coming along with that? Incremental sales. If I'm talking to you about how to install a toilet, okay, guess what I'm also doing? I'm also getting you the toilet kit. I'm getting you the supply lines. I'm getting you the Teflon tape. I'm getting you the putty. I'm getting you all these extra things. And by the way, I talk about a book. It's called The Big Small Rule. Whenever you sell something big, you get the dollars, but not the margin. The small stuff, you get the margin, but not the dollars. So you complement them together to make a seamless experience. Plus, you're spending more time with each customer to build that, what I call that emotional bond. I never experienced this more than ever than at PetSmart. In fact, Jim Daugherty, the CEO, the founder of PetSmart, reached out to me about 4 years ago on the phone. I didn't know who he was. He said, "Hey, this is Jim," and I'm like, "Okay." I've worked at like 1,000 gyms throughout my career, right? He was the founder of PetSmart, and he read my post about my passion for PetSmart charities adoptions, and he added me. He gave me 2.5 pages in his book, The Pet Project. I was so honored. And in there, I talk about the emotional bond that a customer has when they adopt an animal at a PetSmart. Okay. It
Mm-hmm.
is powerful. I haven't seen anything like it since. But the closest thing to that is that experience with each employee, with that customer, building that relationship. You can't build that relationship when you keep sending them to the QR codes and the YouTube videos and the websites, and you lose that chance for that engagement that's so important to build that relationship with the customer.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's easier, okay? But it's not worth it. To me, it's not worth the trade-off. Now,
Yeah.
again, I believe in a hybrid version of it. Okay. Home Depot, I use them as an example because that's the most powerful retailer that I work for, the hardest retailer I ever worked for, by the way. And it was old school. I'm not expecting everybody to go back to old school. Okay. But a hybrid version of have some digital and have some hands-on so that you get the best of both worlds. And that's how you proceed forward. You capture market share because people are the nostalgia is coming back. If you were to
Mm-hmm.
say what's the one thing happening in the world right now, nostalgia is coming back because
Mm-hmm.
people feel how that nostalgia was. And that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, and as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about just how retail has in fact evolved. And I think about, back in the day, we used to preach customer service, When I work with retailers today, I say, take that out of your vocabulary. No
Right.
longer, because that is not what customers are looking for. You walk into Walmart and what do you see on the right-hand side? It's a blue and white sign and it says customer service. And we're going there for our returns, our complaints, our where's the washroom? Truly what customers are looking for today is in fact what you're talking about, which is that experience.
Right.
We have intender traffic today, which is a made up word that I think describes it perfectly. Today, when a customer walks in, the majority of them are doing research before they even come in. And so it used to be in high ticket items, especially, furniture and jewelry and, high touch. Customers would go into 5, 6, 7, even 10 stores before they'd make a decision. Today, that's just not true because they're doing the research before they actually come in. And
Right.
so if they've already done the research, they have some idea of product, they have some idea of price, and they're only going to choose the 1, 2, maybe 3 stores that they would consider purchasing. And so
Right.
when they come in, if they don't get that personal, emotional, if it's a selling experience, or to your point, product knowledge is important. And yet, if we're doing feature dumping, this is what it has, this is what it has, they already know that.
Right.
And so for those retailers who are not truly changing their experience, I
Mhm.
think this whole retail is dead thing is true.
Correct. Yeah,
Like I walked into Viore. Are you familiar with Viore?
I'm not.
Oh, it's one of my favorite examples. They're opening stores. They used to just manufacture, and then they would put their line into different stores, kind of like LG and Best Buy did,
Okay.
with their product, and they just, became manufacturers and distributors. Well, they're opening stores, and they are like the Nordstrom of a higher end activewear store, and they are packed. I mean, lines out the door. And I will tell you, it is a personal experience every time you walk in. They're asking for your name. They're doing a great job of needs assessment. They are matching what you're talking, what your needs are with what they have. They know their product. It's a seamless experience.
Wow.
And
That's
I
impressive.
just don't know a lot of retailers that are leading the way in that.
Here's a good example. I worked with a client about 6 months ago, and it was a 3-month engagement, and they were struggling with talent acquisition, talent retention, like we already talked about. And I said, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to have you implement my GAP strategy and my CAPE strategy. GAP stands for growth, autonomy, and purpose, and CAPE stands for customization, adaptability, personalization, engagement, and differentiation. And I gave them strategies, and I said, let's do this for 3 months, and then we'll circle back and we'll see where things stand. So they implemented those. And when I circled back 3 months later, employee engagement increased 15%, employee productivity increased 12%, and employee satisfaction increased 16%. Now, it's not, I wanted 20% for each one. That was my goal. But it was just, and that was just, and again, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get these strategies implemented. And the key is consistency. But tying into what you're saying, it's retail right now, and I don't say this from an arrogant or standoffish perspective. It's easier now than it's ever been, from my experience, because there's so many tools at your disposal to help customers. So many different ways to communicate with them. Everything is automated now. When I was in retail at Home Depot, for example, as a store manager, you were responsible for all special orders, all installations, and all deliveries.
Mm.
And that's where 90% came, all the headaches came, customer complaints came from those 3 areas. They're all automated now in their separate silos where they belong. And now the managers can just focus on taking care of the customers, which I'm like, I was so excited when a customer came up and said, hey, Jeff, you're out of stock on a faucet, which I wasn't happy about the out of stock. But I'd say, okay, well, you're out of stock on this $100 faucet. I'm going to give you $151 for the same price. Take the $50 markdown. Customers ecstatic. I'm like, and they're like, why are you, employees would walk up to me, Wendi, and they'd say, Jeff, why are you so excited to help customers in the store? I'm like, because it's something I can actually affect and do. I can actually make a tangible effort to help somebody. It's not really that hard, but a fish stinks from the head down. That's a fisherman's term, right? That means it starts at the top. It starts
I
at the
love
top.
that.
Fish always stinks from the head. It stinks the whole way down, but it starts at the top, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not a fisherman, but a lot of my fisherman friends tell me that, and they're like, and I'm like, I love that saying. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
And so it all starts with the C-suite.
That's right.
Okay? Their shadow is cast, and how they, the stores that the companies I worked for that are still in business. There's some, my ex-wife told me at one time, she goes, Jeff, you need to stop working at retailers because they start going out of business after you leave. I worked at Shopko, I worked at Toys R Us, and she was like, Jeff, you got to stop this. And I'm like, it's not me, I promise. But, and so it starts at the top. The reason Home Depot was and is still so successful is because I would walk into a store and Bernie Marcus was in receiving, sweeping the store, sweeping receiving. And I'm like, he's the CEO of the company. Mm-hmm. Leading by example is the most effective way to build morale, to build inclusion, to build experience, and to motivate others. And that's one of my superpowers is engagement and leading by example. So if you look at all the posts that I share, the content, probably 90% of it is what I've already done and lived, so I know it works. Yeah. Talking about the watermelon and the wine and all these different things and the things that I share, I've lived them and I know they work. My book, the reason it's so successful, I spend $0 on advertising because I don't have to. Because it's all the 10-pillar process is lived. I experienced it at 7 different retailers. I know it works, but you got to be consistent with it. And people are like, Jeff, isn't customer service like an old term? I'm like, yeah, it's old, but it never goes away. It's one of those foundational building blocks that never goes away. And that's what's missing right now. So when I consult with some of my clients, I'm like, it's not really that hard sometimes, but the hard part is the consistency piece of it, Wendi, because you get some people that, like to use the term from Top Gun, Maverick. They become mavericks. They want to go off and do their own thing. And I'm like, no, come back in, focus on the customers, care about them, remember their names. When was the last time that somebody remembered your name and thanked you for shopping at their store? Yep. Something so simple, I went to the chiropractor the other day. I go about every 6 months just to get adjusted, right? They know my name. They know what I like, what I don't like. And I'm thinking, this is what separates. And I tell them this. I gave them a nice 5-star Google review. I love giving great reviews. I love it. I get excited because most of the time people want to complain. Well, I want to go ahead and shout out the good stuff that they're doing too.
Yeah. Well, it seems so simple. We look at the magic formula of retail. It's traffic times conversion rate times average sale. Those are your sales. And I think there's retailers out there doing it right for sure. I do
Yes.
think there's so many that are missing the boat in that they're just looking at the data and they're not affecting the behaviors as it starts with their front line to their customers. And so
Correct.
for our retail leaders who are listening to this, Jeff, where do they start? Is it just walk into the store? I mean, one of my mentors, Bruce Herskovitchy, I've worked with him for years and years, probably since the early 90s. And that's one of his things is he gets out of his office and he goes into the store. Is that the secret?
Yeah, because it's one of them. It's the most impactful one is like me. My superpower is being hands-on. So, for example, I could use any of the retailers, but Home Depot was the hardest. I'm running the $70 million building with 300 people from 18 to 80, and I loved it. I loved the energy. I really did. It was tiring and hard, but I enjoyed the challenge. Right? Is I would spend all day going around in the stores when I could. I couldn't be on the floor all the time because there's calls you have to take and meetings and walks and stuff. But I loved being on the floor, and I would walk by all the departments. And if I saw somebody in receiving making a bale, the cardboard bale, I'd hop in there for a couple minutes, help them make the bale. Okay. I'd see somebody over there getting ready to lift something. I'd run over there, help them out, lift it up. I'd call a cart run. I'd be the first one out shagging the carts. Right. And it gave me many opportunities throughout the day to engage with each employee. And I would try to hit every department for at least a few minutes. Now, some departments you get like plumbing, you get stuck in there. It's like the black hole. You can't get out of there. So you got to be careful because there's only one of you and you got to lead the store, right? So you got to kind of like be like a shark, constantly moving to make sure everything's happening. And those stores are very big. So you get a lot of exercise, which is good. But being hands-on is so impactful. Somebody is packing out an end cap. You help them out for 5 or 10 minutes. Hey, how's your day? How's you going? What you're looking forward to this week? And I hear you're going away on that trip. Hey, did you see the new album that just came out by, Def Leppard or, whatever their passions are, you get a chance to bond with them. And then they start to see you as one of them. Okay. Like me, when I got promoted, every time I got promoted, I didn't see myself any differently. I just had more responsibilities, but I wanted to do that because I had a bigger opportunity and I could cast a wider net on helping more people. That's why I wanted to get promoted. I didn't want it for the money. Don't get me wrong, the money's great. But in fact, there's 10 questions that I put in my book that I would always ask somebody when they wanted to get promoted. Only one of them was related to financial acumen. The rest is how do you handle conflict resolution? How do you motivate yourself? How do you motivate others? What are your values and convictions? Why do you want to get promoted? What's the main reason? And if it doesn't include I want to help people, you're not ready for the position. You're not. Because that's really what it's all about. And so, but you got to really genuinely care about people. So I would tell all the retail leaders, regardless of your level, try to be hands-on. Again, whenever you can. You got to be judicious with your time. I get that. The higher you go, the less time. One of the downsides that I didn't like about being promoted was I had less time to do that. Because there's meetings and the walks and all that, and it takes you away from what I really enjoyed doing. And the other downside is the tangibles go away. Now it becomes intangibles. So before, when I was just a department head or an associate, you go pack out an end cap. End cap looks good. You track the sales. You got the related items on there. Everything's perfect. It's tangible. You can touch it. It's tactile, right? You get promoted a couple times. Next thing you know, you can't do that much anymore. Now it's more about people. Like, hey, Johnny said he wants to get promoted to assistant manager. I'm gonna make sure he gets that done within a year. I'm gonna put a game plan together. We're gonna do some succession planning. We're gonna get Johnny promoted. If he puts in the time, continues to grow and get better, I'm not just gonna give it to him. Okay. But those became the tangible things. But sometimes, Wendy, they were years out. Somebody wanting to buy their first home or put the kid through college. That was some of the things I remember the most. I don't remember the end caps. I remember the people that it helped. But you got to be hands-on. That's the most effective way to lead others, is to be there in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder with them, doing it. Now, they don't expect you to be there the whole time. But I had store managers when I was at some of these retailers, Wendy. I only saw them when there was a walk coming. That's it. They were always in the office and never on the floor. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here?
Yeah.
So that's really something that I would recommend.
Yeah. Such good advice. Jeffrey, looking ahead, what excites you most about the future of retail and what concerns you?
What excites me is where we're going is there's stores that are opening again. The technology is coming to assist the customers. What scares me the most is the employee engagement is sliding severely
Yeah.
in the wrong direction. The pendulum's going way to the left and it's not good. And the reason I know this is because I experience it myself. And when I talk to clients, and these clients are all over the world, obviously, but most of them are in the United States, and they share the experiences like you talked about when you have your sessions. And tell me about a bad customer experience that you had. It always comes back to employees. Very rarely is it a policy other than a bad return policy. It's either something's out of stock, you can't find anybody to help you. And getting back to Bernie's thing, the 50-50, he said 50% of the people want to know where something is and how much it is, and the other 50 need help. So that gives you 1 out of 2 people need help, generally. Now, at a Walmart, it might not be that way. You know what I'm saying? Because it's more structured and everything. But anywhere that you need product knowledge, any retailer that has knowledge they have to share with people, other than where an item is and if it's in stock and how much it is, that's going to be a different scenario. But it scares me because the human engagement piece is missing. That's really what's happening.
And that seems like it's the easiest to fix. We're not trying to fix supply chain, although that's a big issue because there's one of 3 reasons the customers in the store today. Number 1, they want it today and they couldn't get it online. Number 2,
Correct.
they want the knowledge that person has. They want the experience. Or number 3, a combination of those two. So if we don't have it in stock and our people are not trained, the whole, the $50 million budget that I have towards marketing just went down down the drain because I'm not providing the experience that they actually expect.
I had a district manager one time when I was in Minneapolis. I was getting ready to get promoted to store manager, and he says, "Jeff, customers don't come in to buy sailboat fuel." I'm like, "What the heck is sailboat fuel?" He goes, "Air." He goes, "They come here because," and again, this is before, like you said, where people can check on the in stocks now. I mean, there's so many advantages right now to technology. I love that piece. I love the fact that you have that technology and that interconnectedness.
Yeah.
But he goes, "They don't come in here to buy nothing. They come in here to buy products, and you need to be in stock." In stock. So what I started doing is I started walking around to I pick 2 departments a week, and I'd write down every out of stock. Okay, write down the amount it costs. So say the item was a paintbrush for $5, and you sell 10 a week, and the average ship time is 3 weeks. So that's $150 per SKU that you're going to miss right there from the time it's out of stock to the time you get it back in stock with the ship times, and that's hoping that it's going to be on the same ship time, right?
That's right.
And if there's 50 out of stocks in that department and it's $4,000 that you lose times 3 weeks, that's $12,000 you lost almost in a month. That's one department now. And I would go through all departments. Now, nobody's ever 100% in stock because if you could be 100% in stock, but you'd be way over in inventory, your profitability would be in the tank, your net income would be in the tank. But so I'd have some department heads say, "I'm never going to be out of stock," and they just order tons of product. And they'd have like 50 weeks of supply. And I'm like, "No, we can't do that. We got to maximize our turns and stuff like that." But yeah, so it's little things like that. That's a hands-on thing. But it's really not that hard if you really care about people. You got to like people, though. And there's a lot of managers that just wanted it. They would tell me, I got promoted now. I can hang out in the office. I can hang out in the back. I don't got to do this." And I'm like, no, you're going the wrong way, brother. You're going the wrong way. And this is my boss I'm telling it to.
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're going the wrong." I'm telling you, karma's undefeated. I created that expression called karma is undefeated. What you do comes back to you. And sure enough, a lot of these managers are no longer managers anymore. They weren't leaders. They were managers. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Big difference. Well, Jeff, you are a wealth of information, and this has been so fun to just pick your brain a little bit on what's in your book and what the day in the life of Jeffrey McNulty. And so I would just, I always like to make sure that I leave our listeners with a little something of, what do they do with all of this? Because, it seems like there are some things that retail leaders can do today to just create sustainability, to create a better customer experience, to be in stock. So with everything that we've talked about today, what advice would you give to our listeners? What's something that they can do today?
The easiest thing is just to memorize my SAGE acronym. Okay? Be sincere, authentic, genuine, and engaged in everything that you do. That's really the easiest thing because that's the actuator for everything branches out from that for me. Everything. Mm-hmm. And I created these because in retail, people love acronyms. There's acronyms for everything. At Home Depot, there was called a BFS. It stands for big effing sign. No, no, no lie. That's what it was actually called, but it was shortened to B. And I'm like, so it's actually called a BF sign? I'm not saying the right word, but you know what I mean, right?
That's awesome.
And then there was an RBFS, a really big,
Uh,
oh my God. And this was true. I'm not making this up. And so anyway,
I believe it.
acronym I created because that's what keeps me grounded and centered to make sure that I'm always making the right decisions. Now, we're not perfect,
Right.
but this is my anchor that keeps me centered and grounded for ensuring that I'm doing the right thing. And it's not about helping myself. I focus on helping others. Okay? Like our conversation today, I'm not getting paid for this. You're not getting paid for this, right? We're doing this because we want to help people. And people are like, Jeff, you do a lot of free podcasts. I'm like, but it's not about that. I'm helping people. The universe will repay me in return because my energy, my intentions generate my karma, and my intentions are to help others because I know what it's like to work in retail, and it's not easy. It's a hard job. It's physical. It's mental. You're working nights, weekends, and holidays.
Yep.
It's not exactly a glamorous job. To your first question that you asked, why retail? A lot of people fall into it, and I got good at it, so I liked it. But it's not like it's a glamorous gig. You know what I'm saying? But it's a very, very needed career. It's a rewarding career if you care about people.
Yeah. So true. Well, in retail, you get to be a generalist because you get to be good at everything. You get to be good at customer experience. You get to be good at product. You get to be good at finance. Like there's a lot of different things that you learn through retail that I didn't realize was a gift until I actually got there.
Perfect.
So good.
And
Well, Jeffrey, yeah, go ahead.
for anybody looking for my services, they can go to newretailethos.com. That's my website. The Ultimate Retail course is at theultimateretailcourse.com. And then, of course, the book, they can purchase it on Amazon. It's in like 28 countries now. So it's resonating with people because, again,
Yeah.
it's built upon empirical evidence versus theoretical ideas. And I read a lot of books, and they tell you if you do A and B, you might get C. Or if you follow the pillars and you do it consistently, you will get the results.
And it's proven through experience, not theory, which I like to read books like that. So we will make sure that, Jeffrey, all of your information is in the show notes. And the best way to contact you, is it through LinkedIn? Is it through an email? What's the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably good. I mean, because I'm on there so much. Or
Right.
my email is jpmcnulty@newretailethos.com. They can send that to me there, but the problem is I don't want to get a lot of spam. But so most people contact me like you did. You contact me through email or LinkedIn, and we connected that way because I'm on there. I'm like you. I only post about 2 days a week now because each post takes me about an hour to create, and then I create the visual, and then with the engagement from day 1 to day 3, it's about 8 hours worth of engagement. So it's like a part-time job, but I'm passionate about it, and I really want to help others.
Yeah, so good. Well, Jeffrey, thank you for your time. And to our listeners, we did not get to the watermelon story. So go to Jeffrey's LinkedIn and find that because it's great. He also has a couple others on, the importance of actually writing things down and what happens when we take it pencil to paper, which I also thought was excellent. And find out what Jeffrey's favorite wine is. So thank you, Jeffrey, for being a guest on the show. Thank you to our listeners, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Unleash with Wendi Swanson. Make sure to subscribe and follow to be notified when the newest episodes of the podcast go live. Please take a moment to rate and review us. It helps others discover Unleashed and join our movement of forward-thinking leaders. You can find contact information and important links in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, keep leading with authenticity, embrace change, and choose to live life unleashed.